Matrix with KO. I've got a caller from Kent, I think. Hello, good evening. Hello, is that Morris from Kent?
Hello.
Yeah, good evening. Please, can you make your contribution? You're calling from Kent, right?
That's correct. I'm calling from Kent.
All right, go ahead, please. Let's have your contribution.
Hello, hi. I'm calling regarding the early marriage that has been going on in Nigeria.
Yeah.
It's really sad to hear what is actually happened in Nigeria, because in this day and night time, you will think Nigeria has moved forward from children's slavery, early marriages, and things like this. These men, they're grown enough. They have children. I mean, if they have children and people come to devour their own children, how would they even feel as a father? Why would a man even grow up and be thinking to get married to a little girl, to want to devour a little child? Why would a man want to do that? You know, I look at all the things to be like, it's really sickening to hear. You understand? Every children in this world, they have the right to live their life. They have the right to have a proper education. They have the right to live like a little children. People are making all sorts of flimsy excuses concerning children early marriage. Early marriages, children, someone gives birth to them. And these children, they just come to life. They haven't even grown to even know the system of even how life operates. But for one man to want to marry these little children and want to devote them, it's so sad.
Okay.
It's really sad to hear.
Yeah,
I think as big as Nigerian is, I think they are the fifth oil nation in the world. Nigeria has so much money. They could put change. They could put a law. The law to change things like this.
Okay.
To say anyone that get married to a little children, they are pedophile.
Okay,
They are pedophile. Who wants to get married to a little child? This is the reason why people adopt little children. You know, why would a man even look at a little child sexually?
Okay. All right, thank you. I can understand more is an emotional issue, and rightly so. I want to thank you for your phone call. And it's one issue that I think every Nigerian, irrespective of where you come from, should be concerned about. But let's go to Abuja, and we will be joined by Kadaria Ahmed. Is one of Nigeria's foremost journalists, and she is actually been hammered on social media for talking about this issue. Coincidentally, she's from the northern part of the country, and it's seen as a taboo to actually raise this kind of concern. If we have Kadaria there, good evening, Kadaria.
Hi, Kaide.
Hi, good evening. Good to see you, Kadaria. Now,
good to see you, Kaide, but just a little correction. I'm actually in Lagos.
You're in Lagos, okay. Okay, good. Kadaria, now, but I'm right to say you're from the northern part of Nigeria.
Yes, from one of the states that has one of the biggest issues around child marriage. Actually, I'm from Zamfara.
Zamfara. So, Kadaria, I'll leave it to you to just explain the true situation of things in the northern part. We've had Rashida here, and Rashida has touched about the issue in southern Nigeria, that even though people say it's a northern thing, but actually, we still have such issues in southern Nigeria. And we also looked at the issue of the U.S., where girls as young as 13 are allowed to get married in some states. But how serious is this issue in the northern part of the country?
It's a very serious issue. And the problem is that people tend to sort of look at it from the perspective of only the child. And that is a very important perspective because it's a moral issue. But there is a wider implication when societies actually endorse and like of your last caller was saying, you know, end up being basically disenfranchised. They're forced into marriages. Essentially, you get pedophilia because you get older men who are sleeping with these children who are not adults, who are not in any way qualified to get married. And there's a whole lot of things that happens when that takes place, including health issues, where children who are not properly mature get pregnant, and in the process of trying to have babies end up with very, very bad problems. VVF is one of them. And then, of course, because marrying young girls is so easy, divorcing them culturally in Nigeria, in the north, is also so easy. So you end up, after the first, second child, they're divorced, they don't have an education, they can't look after their kids, they can't look after themselves. And even raising the kids becomes an issue because they themselves have not been equipped to be parents because they are their children. And so there's a wider implication for a society because almost half of its population is denied the ability to grow and to be productive and to contribute to that society. There is a reason that the North is basically at the bottom of all the indices that you look at in Nigeria when it comes to human development, from literacy to education to maternal mortality rates, to infant mortality rates. We're at the bottom of all of these indices when you look at them.
Okay. Kadaria, why is it that we only have lone voices like yourself, and maybe until recently we've had Emir Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi, the Emir of Kano, talking about these issues, and quite a pocket of people don't like discussing this issue in the North. It's seen as like a taboo. Like when you raise it, the religion
well, I mean, look at the kind of reaction someone who is as powerful as the emir. Look at the way he's been lambasted, abused, insulted. There's even a move to actually try and see if he can be removed from the throne. So if someone that powerful can face that sort of a backlash for talking about this important thing, can you imagine what it is like for people who are not known, who don't have maybe resources? There's a lot of fear, you know. So I'm not completely convinced that my views around child marriage are isolated. In fact, I happen to know, because I sit down with particularly women, a lot of women that I talk to, educated women in particular, who basically do not like what is going on, who feel it is wrong, and who understand the implications for our society, and that if these things don't stop, there's certain things that will never change. But there's a lot of fear because there is nothing you don't get called. I mean, for women like myself, the first thing they try to do is impeach your integrity. So you see on social media, people will suddenly start talking about, oh, is she married, is she not married, oh, she's this, she's that. I mean, I can't begin to tell you the sort of names I've been called for raising some of these issues. So it takes a certain degree of, if not courage, willingness to basically absorb abuse to be able to talk about these things. But you know, I think it's changing because we're getting NGOs that are beginning to tackle these issues.
Okay. And Kadaria, look, I've got a very worrying statistic here. Apparently 26 out of 36 Nigerian states, if that's the correct number of states, 26 failed to adopt a law that is meant to a law legalizing marriage only when a young child is 18 up to, and out of the 26, majority of these states are from the northern part of Nigeria. Considering that most of the governors are first-degree holders and they are so-called educated, is it that we're also not looking at the issue of religion, because the excuse is a religious commitment? You can't do anything about it.
No, absolutely rubbish. There are a lot of religion. There are a lot of countries all over the world that have majority Muslims, and in fact, some of them even run Sharia-type government, and yet there is a minimum age of marriage. So you know, we've basically in the North, and I think the Emir Sanusi alluded to this, for some reason, we've chosen the most backward interpretation of Islam that we can find, and we stick to it. The reason for me is obvious. There's a lot of selfishness, patriarchy, misogyny, the hate for women, and the belief that you have to control them is at the root of this. Men do not want to give up their privilege, and they're never going to give up their privilege until we fight for it. My frustration is that women who understand these things are not sticking their necks out enough to be able to confront this head on. For example, I expected to see a lot of support for some of the utterances that the Emir made, particularly around trying to codify family law so that there are rules and regulations that govern the way we marry, the way we divorce, the way we interact with our wives, with our children, if they are female children. And this codification that he's trying to put together does not go against Islamic law. In fact, he is putting it together in line with Islamic teachings. But because the conversation is limited to people who are trying to practice, if you like, the most backward version of Islam, what you get is people coming and saying you are not a Muslim. I don't know how many times I've been told, yes, you're not a Muslim, that's why. You're not a Muslim, that's why. And so they intimidate you, they abuse you, and most people quickly don't have the ability basically to be able to take that sort of abuse. And you can't blame them.
Okay, Kadaria,
but it's a fight that we must win. If the society is to change, if we are to join, our peers within the Nigerian state, first of all, and then in the wider global community, we have got to fight this fight and win it. It's that simple.
Kadaria, let me play the devil's advocate here, if devil's advocate is the right choice of words. I look at conversations on social media, and probably it's also the way the conversation about child marriage is going on. Like, you have people on social media, mainly from the southern part of the country, when they talk about the issue of child marriage, they just generalize. And this probably puts people on the defensive. Do you think there should be a right way of having this conversation?
Well, listen, I hear you, and I understand you saying that there can be some provocation. But you see, ultimately, it's a bit like the conversation on Nigeria when people say, why doesn't the international press represent Nigeria in a certain way? I always tell people, look, we are the only ones who can tell our own story and tell it properly. We cannot put the responsibility of telling our story properly on the head of other people. They would always frame it within their own, reference point. And it's the same thing with this issue. Do we have a problem? Yes, we do. Are we doing anything to address it? We are. Is what we're doing enough? Not at all. Are the people who are trying to do things to address it getting the support that they require? No, they are not. And if the fact is that these are all the issues that we face, then really, the rest of it is noise. We should be able to block out the noise and tell ourselves the honest truth. We should face ourselves squarely in the mirror and tell ourselves the honest truth. We have these problems. These are problems that only we can solve. Even if outsiders are pointing to it, it's because there's something that exists. If nothing existed, outsiders will not be having a conversation that can be classified either wrong or right.
Okay, hold on. Let's bring in a caller in here. Hold on, Kadaria. Hello, good evening, caller.
Yeah, hello, Kayode. Good evening.
Good evening. What's your name and where are you calling from, please?
Yes, Kayode. My name is Rawlings. I'm calling from London.
Okay. Do you have any question for Kadaria or any comment on this?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting discussion you are having, and Kadaria Ahmed has actually introduced a very good dimension to the entire discussion.
Yeah.
And then I think it was good to hear her speak that it's not entirely a religious thing, essentially early marriage practices has been seen in northern Nigeria.
Yeah.
Because I was privileged to do my NYSC back then in Kano. Then I have several discussions with persons who tell me categorically that Islamically the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, or I don't know if they were quoting the Hadith or the Quran, but they said that a girl is not supposed to see her second menstrual cycle while still in her father's house.
Wow.
And then I really wondered, and then they actually quoted some verses, and I actually thought that it was actually a religious thing, until I'm getting to hear again from other commentators that it's not really a religion thing. Incidentally, when I started work, and then I was transferred, I left Kano, I was privileged also to work with the daughters of quite a lot of high-class Islamic scholars from northern Nigeria. And of course, these are girls or ladies that are more than 18, and they are not married, and their father has still highly respected cleric. So it now gets me thinking to know that it's not entirely a religious thing, but maybe it's cultural.
Okay. On that note, sorry to cut you short. On that note, I would like to bring in Kadaria because you made a very important point there. Thanks for that contribution. Kadaria, my last caller, you probably didn't get him.
Let me quickly say, Kayode, look, I'm not a religious authority, and I don't want to get into a discussion about what religion says, because I can be accused of all sorts of things. But what I can tell you is that there is a lot of debate even among religious scholars as to the interpretation of this particular practice of the Prophet. Because if you even go back to history, you don't even need to look at Islam. Even European royalty used to marry off, daughters at 13 and 14. Yeah. And like you pointed out, even in some certain states in the United States, there are laws that still allow, girls as young as 13 to get married. Yeah. So there's definitely a cultural element. But another element that people also don't talk about is that there's an element of poverty which feeds into this. Because like your friend pointed out, she, knew girls who were much older, daughters of clerics, not forced to marry. There are a lot of parents who, because they're finding it difficult to look after their daughters, the kids that they have, send them to school and all of that, the easiest thing for them is to marry off their daughter. They get a little bit of dowry in return, and then that is one less mouth to feed. And if they're lucky, she marries into a family that is a little bit more affluent than they are. And when I say more affluent, in the north, that standard is very low. That affluent father husband can sometimes help with looking after her younger ones. So it's a complex issue. It's certainly not religion. That is the excuse that has been used. It's a mixture of culture, it's a mixture of the standing of the family within the community, because the more affluent families are, the less likely they are to marry off their daughters at a certain age, because they are in school. Okay, and so by the time they finish primary school, secondary school, and go to university, you understand the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, I do.
So, so it's a mixture of different things.
Kadaria, let me quickly read this text message to you, then we'll take a call from Dr. Musa. I've got a text message from Bella. She says, it's good. This is a very sensitive and sad topic. Nobody has mentioned the sociological problems that this can be causing these young girls. These girls grow to believe that this is the norm, so self-esteem must be low. History continues to repeat itself due to lack of education. Our country, Nigeria, needs the correct policies and framework in place. So back to Kadaria before I go to Dr. Musa. Kadaria, do we have a framework? A policy in place?
I'm afraid. Look, no, as like you pointed out, the domestication fought hard by men who are benefiting personally, whose appetite for young girls is huge, and who want to keep marrying and divorcing. I mean, a particular senator in my state is notorious for marrying young girls, and after 2-3 years he will divorce and marry again. So and yet, these are people who are supposed to be the leaders in our community. And at some point, it's going to be, ordinary people have got to basically say enough is enough. The tragedy of what is going on in northern Nigeria is that the victims are often not educated enough and don't actually have, the tools to fight. And in many cases are not even aware that, something is being done against them, because they've been indoctrinated to believe that this is a religious thing and that they are serving God. But there's just so much divorce in the north. You see so many young girls with a child, two children, at the age of 16. A girl has been married and divorced and has 2 children. I mean, how would she raise those kids? What sort of children? So there's a generational thing. She herself is a child, not in a position to raise children, and it goes on and on.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Musa here. Hello, good evening, Dr. Musa.
Good evening.
Good evening. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Coventry.
All right, go ahead, please. We've got Kadaria in Lagos.
Okay, hello, Kadaria. Thank you so much for putting this on the front burner. I absolutely agree with Kadaria that this is not a thing of religion. It is beyond religion. If you take a look at the number of people that are involved in this problem, particularly, you discover that many of them are from the lower strata of the society, those from poor homes. Rich people in the society do not force their daughters into this kind of situation or marriage. They send their children as far as university and even send them abroad to study. So often, it is the poor who are facing this kind of problem. Now, how do we solve this problem? The first thing is start educating people, make sure that they allow their children to go to school, and then from there we can begin to solve the problem. Women particularly should be made to understand that Islam does not say you should not be educated. In fact, Islam gives a lot of priority to education of women.
And Dr. Musa, let me put this. Is it something that we will say the Nigerian government needs to be more proactive about, like if 26 states are not adopting these policies, you know, is there a way?
Definitely, it is something the Nigerian government should be more proactive about. I mean, when I say it is a thing of poverty, we have to start thinking of how we can lift people out of poverty and make education not just compulsory but free up to certain level where people would be able to afford it. If a girl cannot go to school, I mean, a parent cannot even afford to feed the girl, then the next thing is they will start thinking who will help. And the rich men out there who would come and exploit them would be willing to take over such responsibility.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Musa. Kadaria, are you still there? Hello, is Kadaria still there? Hello, Kadaria? Yeah, I've got a text message.
I can hear.
Can
you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. I've got a text message from Rob Anderson, and he says, your guest, Kadaria Ahmed, is doing justice to the topic. I'm greatly enlightened today, especially explanation on the fact that early marriage as practiced in northern Nigeria is not a religious issue. And Dr. Musa has actually just backed up that point of view, that look, it's got nothing much to do with religion. Now, in moving forward, how can we as let me exclude myself, how can opinion molders, what can opinion molders do to support the minority of people in the north that are highlighting these issues? And when I follow you on social media and I see the way you take the flak for some of these things, and I, like you rightly point, I wonder what would happen to people who are not really greatly known. What can we do to support the minority that are highlighting these issues up north?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, Kayode, I said this at the beginning, and I believe that I think only we can solve this problem. As much as support is nice, and you know, things like the program you're doing today is good because you know it highlights the issue. The truth is, we are kind of speaking to the converted. If you think about the nature of the people who will watch a program such as yours, the chances are they believe, you know, that there should be no child marriage. The problem is in the rural areas. The problem is around law, is around enforcement, and a whole lot of things like that. So the people who are making the laws, like Dr. Musa pointed out, their kids go to school, but they are sitting in Abuja comfortable to make or refuse to domesticate laws that will allow people who are not as privileged as themselves to begin to enjoy the same benefits they are enjoying. And so, like I said, there's a lot of a question of sort of the appetite of old men who sit in Nigeria's Senate and who want to keep, you know, abusing girls, because that's essentially what it is. I think the kind of support that is required, the kind of work that the emir is doing in a place like Kano, where he's beginning to codify family law and then let that take root, so that if you can't afford to marry, you are not allowed to marry, so that there's a minimum age of marriage. I mean, in places like Egypt, it is 18. I think in places like Morocco, it is 17 or 16. And I think based on the codification he's doing, he's found some authority within the Quran that has placed the age at about 17. So these are all important steps if we are to tackle this issue. But also, people like us who are from those places have got to have the courage to have those conversations regardless of how we get attacked. And so my call is for educated women, educated men who are northerners to begin to take the lead in this conversation and to develop a thick skin for criticism and begin to do advocacy using the language that our local people understand and begin to preach to them and show them why educating their daughters is better for them and for the wider society.
On that note, Kadaria Ahmed, I really want to thank you for just shining light on this issue, on the issue of child marriage. And thanks for coming on the program. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Kaide. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So viewers, you know, we've tried our best to try and deal with this issue of child marriage in Nigeria. It's not just northern Nigeria, like it's been addressed by our various contributors. It's an issue that affects the whole of Nigeria and, surprise, surprise, even the United States and most parts of the world. So that young child should be in school, should be empowered to be leaders in our world. We have Angela Merkel in Germany. We have Theresa May here. We have in Liberia. So we need more women leaders to actually lead us right, not just give them out in marriage at a very young age and cause quite a lot of medical issues to them. And let me also say to you, President Buhari did not attend Jumat service today. So it's going to be the 4th week that we've not seen the president actively taking part in governance. Is something wrong with President Buhari? If yes, we had better start praying for him. All we know is that Nigeria need to know the truth and know what's happening to the president so that we can support him. I think this issue of is doing fine and working from home, it doesn't sound well for a country of 160 million people, the power giant of Africa. We wish him well, but we also want him to tell us what is happening, and so that we can move forward. Thank you. God bless you. We'll see you next month. Is your program Politics with KO. From Nigeria, we'll be going through the geopolitical zones. We'll have correspondents that will be telling you what is happening, a review of monthly events. Since it's once a month, it's going to be your summary. Nigerians in diaspora would not need to go to Nigeria to find out what is happening. We'll be getting live reports, we'll have interviews, and we will also have live phone calls so that it's a conversation between us and yourself. It's an open parliament, free speech, no holds barred. Politics with KO is back.